Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first IFST webinar on this 60th anniversary year. So can I say happy 2024 and happy birthday to IFST. The title of this webinar is How to Become a Great Third-Party Manufacturing Partner Working Successfully with Small Businesses. This webinar is organized by the Food Innovation Special Interest Group, and it forms part of the Food Innovation Toolkit that was launched last year. You can find the toolkit under Resources and Policy on the IFST's website. My name is Valia Christidou. I am a lecturer in new product development, a co-founder of a biscuit brand, a mentor and coach on innovation in food, and also the vice chair of IFST's publication committee and the communications lead of the food innovation scene. Many food entrepreneurs and small businesses want to outsource their production to third-party manufacturers. Developing a great relationship based on clear communication, collaboration, and trust is the foundation of success. This webinar will cover the perspective of both the client and the manufacturer. It will identify opportunities to bridge each other's needs and give you practical tools to create successful partnerships. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to IFST's Webinar Hub. Feel free to make comments and ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can also upvote other people's questions by clicking the like button next to their question. There will be a Q&A session after the presentation where we will respond to as many of your questions as we can. You are all in for a treat because we have not one, not two, but three speakers with vast experience when it comes to third-party manufacturing and small business collaboration. Ian Meadows has guided many businesses in their search for a suitable production partner. Ian has run some of UK's top food brands, as well as co-founded his own nationally distributed brand working with co-manufacturers. Ruth Dolby has over 35 years of developing food working with SMEs, large manufacturers, multinationals, major retailers, and wholesalers. Alice Jones is a senior food innovation advisor at the Food Innovation Centre at the University of Nottingham, which is the commercial arm of the university that supports businesses to innovate through the application of food science and technology. We'll start with Ruth and Ian, who will take us through this journey of collaboration from both the perspective of the third party and the small businesses. Then Alice will share her experience, and after that, we'll go into Q&A. So with this, I would like to hand over to Ian and Ruth.
Thank you, Valia. So Ruth and I work with smaller businesses, helping them to launch and grow their products. We do this through running workshops, webinars, and also one-to-one mentoring. To date, we've worked with around 200 small brands, small businesses. And their biggest challenge when we're working with them is actually how to find the right manufacturing partner for scaling up their business. What you'll hear today is based on our experience working with clients, and I'll define clients here because we'll use that word a lot during the presentation as being the people who are looking to have their product manufactured by a partner, and also working with third-party manufacturers themselves. We've actually put together a mirror version of this, which is actually for small businesses to help them to understand how to work with manufacturing partners and how to get the biggest benefit for all. So why are we here today? Well, essentially, clients want to outsource production. And manufacturing partners can work with clients both to grow their business and their profits, and provide the right environment for success. The client is usually coming to this position because they've got bigger demand, either actual or anticipated. But I think more importantly, they are looking at more demanding customers. As the volume grows, you get into higher level supermarkets, etc. They want certification. They want comfort that the product, when it arrives, is going to be consistent. It's going to be to time, etc. But it's also frightening for them. A lot of small businesses, the people who set them up may have limited business experience and certainly may have limited food experience. And they've probably heard more bad stories than good. There's also a dilemma, obviously, for the manufacturing partner, because the dilemma there is, should I increase my business and take on more volume? Or is the risk of disrupting what I have too much? But there is a way of ensuring that there's a mutual benefit. So the relationship goal is mutual benefit. And as a third-party manufacturer, you can provide things that they simply can't. That's more volume of a consistent quality produced in a way that the customer can trust. It also releases time in what are usually time-poor businesses for them to focus on other activities like sales and marketing, further MPD, or in fact, the never-ending treadmill of trying to raise incremental funding.
Thank you, Ian, and good afternoon, everyone. PMP's first question she'd ask is, why do it? It has got to have commercial advantages to you in all its manifestations. As a third-party manufacturing partner, you can utilise the production area better. By maximising your planning, you can reduce your bottlenecks and give a more consistent shifts, and so improve your staff relationships. And this is a hidden cost that many people don't count, how much it costs you to onboard reliable staff. And you also improve your line capacity, which defrays your overheads. What's meant by that? It's the cost you have for running your factory, for turning the lights on. If you've got someone else contributing to these costs, you defray it. That is, you have all or part of the money for that expense paid by your client. Just as you do if you build these overheads into your production costing model. Remember, an idle line is not earning money, but that's a deep dive that Ian actually talks about on another webinar that we run. By talking to more suppliers, you then actually strengthen your supplier network, or by taking on more from your current suppliers, you can often negotiate better delivery and other services. I've seen companies grow and reduce risks associated with one big customer walking out on them. By serving multiple customers, when I was at Tesco, we were strongly discouraged from allowing our own label manufacturers to place all their eggs in one basket. It was viewed as healthy to have a spread of income sources, as long as we were the most important client, of course.
If only it was that easy, Ruth. As much as clients love you as a manufacturer, they've got fears too. They want you to make their life easier and provide the key to their success. But to them, you can be like an oil tanker, large, process-driven, necessarily process-driven, and maybe slow to respond. But also, their product is their baby. And they've heard many stories, some real, some apocryphal, of people who had bad experiences in the process. So that they're wary, they're cautious. And whether that be the yogurt brand that we worked with that was discontinued by the manufacturer only to be relaunched under their own brand 3 months later, or a large multinational that I worked for who had a product which had a unique characteristic and selling point where we needed to invest in the replacement line. And so the product had to be made externally for a year. Obviously, during that process, we had to go through how you delivered that texture benefit. And the production went great. But afterwards, within 6 months, the average quality of private label had increased significantly. And a bit like in a court case, when the judge tells the jury, please disregard that last statement, you can't unhear what you've already heard. So clients are looking for a good heart. And as the legendary Fergal Sharkey once sang, a good heart is hard to find.
Okay, so let's look at it from the other side. Here are a few attractions and distractions that I've experienced as a PMP, working with the full range from large producers, entrepreneurs, and celebrity chefs, all wanting to extend their capacity. Now, they all think that they've got different challenges, but all need the same things and issues solving. Once you recognise this, the rest becomes a lot easier. There are some red flags. So for both parties, if you can't be excited by their list of loves, or if they do not convey them to you in a way that you understand, there may be a mismatch. You don't have to accept everyone that approaches you, but you do need to listen and appraise them. The celebrity chef Ken Hom, at the height of his UK fame, wanted his own retail lines. Big personality, and when he felt challenged that he couldn't have what he wanted, like any human being, he dug his heels in, and boy, did he dig them in hard. But when challenged in a very different way, he got excited and he got incredibly collaborative. It was a familiar story. A chef can serve sugar snap peas from the kitchen to the table, but in an acidic sauce that will see you through to the end of an 8-day shelf life, it looked like a bowl of grey slugs before it left the back of the factory. He then introduced me to a more authentic Chinese ingredient that he'd actually forgotten about, ear tree mushrooms, which improved the retail product. We sourced it, and then he introduced it into his London restaurant. So it was a big win all ways round. Address these example of fears by leading on the expectation. It doesn't matter if you are the more experienced partner or not. By setting out your own timetable and underlining the cost to all if they change their minds late in the day, keeps the project tight and successful. Talking things through ahead of time works wonders.
Thanks, Ruth. So across our many years' experience in the food industry, we've identified what we think are 4 keys to having a successful relationship delivering mutual benefit. So firstly, make sure you're on the same page. Have a mutual understanding of what you both expect, and also understand what the deal breakers are. There's no point hiding a deal breaker till further down the line or the last minute, because you're wasting time and getting frustrated, and it's easily avoidable. But having got on that same page, keep on it by clear communication and plenty of communication. Agree a process that keeps you up to date, keeps both parties up to date, and be accessible. There's nothing worse than playing phone catch up. And flexibility. Flexibility is always a bone of contention. How much, how little? But we all recognize that things do happen. And so try to be as flexible as possible. And most importantly, for all of these, be open for business. Make sure that your client feels that you want to do business with them. So, understanding those mutual explanations. Well, some expectations are unrealistic, and the reality that you face as a manufacturing partner is not always understood by the client. We've split here 2 lists. One is what the client expects from the manufacturing part automatically, and the others are things that they underestimate that exist within your process and your system. I was talking to a company in North Wales who, when they have time, maybe in the evenings or at the weekends, they actually lease out their kettles to smaller manufacturers. And they say almost without exception, when it comes to costs, there is an expectation of lower costs from the client. And that's because they think you've got scale, etc. But of course, the reason why they're asking you to make the product is the reason has costs that that they are trying to avoid, but you pay, like the cost of heating and lighting a big site, of running a canteen, of having an HR manager. In terms of flexibility, there's reasonable and unreasonable flexibility expectations. I mean, poor planning does not make it my emergency. But to quote Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the mouth. So things do happen. They think of your factory as an extension of their kitchen. And in some ways it is, but probably not in the way that they think. They don't appreciate the discipline and planning that's required by a manufacturing partner. They haven't been in your shoes. They don't have a perception of the scale involved. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was a program on Channel 4 called Oldie's Next Big Thing. And within Oldie's Next Big Thing, what they did is they had maybe 5 products which had perhaps more unique attributes. And they were looking to do them as a trial in their stores with a view to giving a listing. And without fail, one of the questions was, how many can you make a week? And I'm merging all the answers here, but they broadly went along the lines of, well, if I work on Thursday and my sister packs them after work in the evening, and I can get the mother-in-law to help me out every other week, I can do 1,000 a week. To which Oldie's reply would be, our first order is 250,000 units. And that's an example of just not having the appreciation of the scale involved.
Okay, so forewarned is forearmed. Here are some things to prepare for. Remember, if either partner is working blindfold, you've got a high chance of getting lost. Take this decision to be the greatest version of a sat-nav. The starting point is to agree, are you going the fastest route, the shortest route, or the one with the least turns? And treat it like a gate post, but explain what a gate process, explain what one of those is. Explain that each gate has got to be open to move to the next step, and which steps can be worked in parallel and which absolutely have to definitely be sequenced to proceed to launch. Manage the expectations internally within your own company as well as the clients. Many companies take this as an opportunity to revisit their own path from thought to fork and tighten up internal decision making to smooth their own journey. One nameless sizable company found that they were taking longer to launch their own brand label than they were clients. So they revised how they were serving their internal colleagues and actually found they were working in a much happier place. None of this is as daunting as you might think. As long as you realise that it's a two-way street and you'll communicate what you need as well as what you can offer. Remember the basics of your equations? Equations balance. Done properly, there will be solutions and commercial benefits to both sides. Now, this is one of our favourite sayings, and the reason why it's our favourite saying is it's all too true. Okay, so an old cartoon, but it's still so true, an all too common scenario. Each picture here enables you to understand that if your internal departments mess up your own launches, think that what they can do to a client. So have the product that meets the need or the request of the client, or you're just wasting your time, resources, product, reputation, and energy. And the energy will just run out. In other words, don't assume and don't overcomplicate. Making assumptions might work, but it's a gamble. And more often you will end up taking longer or lose the opportunity, damage your reputation, as I've already said, which are usually hard won, and all in a long agonizing journey instead of sharing a plan. Ask and listen to the answers and then plan. The art of negotiation, so the psychologists say, are 98% listening to understand the other person's need. Then you can understand if you can meet their needs or a new solution needs to be tackled. Okay, now, despite Ian's suggestion, I'm not about to start singing. Those who know me will be quite relieved. So, what do you, oh, why is this not doing this? It's not going to play in. Ah, there you go. Can you see what I see? Now I've shown you that there's a toad. Can you see the horse face? And can you unsee the toad? Do you see their recipe as a list of ingredients with storage needs and allergens, while they see their recipe as a perfect blend of flavors and textures? Two very quick real-life examples. When moving from kitchen to factory, I've known development chefs to despair at the changes to their recipe, forgetting that we're all in one company. So think what it's like if it's a client. All it took was to listen and then go down into the weighing room to get them to stack the ingredients in a different order of the herbs and spices, so the cookhouse could cook it all in the right order. Angst over, and the result actually was an improved product. And also, one of the other things that I've learned along the way is that the size of containers for tinned tomatoes changes the flavour and texture. So whether you've got a tin that you'd use domestically or a palatiner or all the variations in between, you need to show the client samples from the correct factory ingredients, or expect to face production quality misunderstandings and challenges later in the process and having your first production rejected. Quite often, simple solutions are often the most effective. Okay, as Ian said, we need to do some communication building, and I'm labouring this point because I've had to extricate too many teams and companies from these issues. Does the potential client speak food production? If so, as a beginner, an intermediate, or an expert, it's a different language. Is that entrepreneur a professional food marketeer, or from food service pivoting their business, or a home cook? Let's not lose sight of why there is a demand at the moment for PMPs. During COVID, many manufacturers retracted their services, serving their biggest customers, who in turn restricted the number of SKUs that they bought. At the same time, people within food service industry were on furlough, and others with no food industry knowledge whatsoever had also had time to reevaluate their work plans. Now they're looking for PMPs. But watch out, they may not be traveling at the same pace as you. Their business might not yet be their full-time job. I've worked with many successful companies that started out as additional to the day job. But when did you ever work 9 to 5? IFST have some excellent resources, as Valia has said, and she'll go into more detail later, for sharing, as checklists to show what you bring to the party. And go on, an honest, quick plug for the flow chart written by John Points, Andy Kerridge, and myself. And we show where new product development meets technical, meets production, and explain it's just not getting hold of a bigger pan with a bigger spoon. The more you walk the path with the client, the more you understand their capabilities. Not every conversation turns to gold. So what we suggest is a sort of prenup, or agree a break point, a get out clause, so that both parties can walk away with reputation, pride, and hopefully pocket in place, and reduce the nasty surprises. One that I've used many times is you agree a cost for doing the first production and then reevaluate from there on.
So accessibility. It's more than accessibility, it's accessibility and visibility. People need to know that you're there. We worked with or working with a small company that was looking to expand their production. They did all of the usual internet searches, going to the various organizations which pull manufacturing partners together, but just could not find any partner at all. And so they ended up going to Anuga and literally going around stall by stall to find the right partner. So it's no good being willing to do this business if people don't know you're there and how to contact you. But a single point of contact builds trust. It facilitates an understanding of how things need to work. It reduces frustration and increases efficiency.
Okay, well, let's consider the difference between contortion and flexibility. Basically, contortion hurts. Flexibility is a lot more comfortable. Working with a new or small brand business can have many advantages to any size of PMP, as we've already mentioned: better line and staff retention, increased buying power for both, increased network recognition, greater impetus to improve your own best practice by seeing your own systems through new eyes. Make mutually useful opportunities. By special shorter runs, you can cover overheads and have time for planned maintenance or deep cleans in one whole shift, in place of adding a night shift or that horrendous weekend shift. The difference between an average and a great PMP is the TLC that you give there, and it doesn't have to be with much strain. I mean, do you know a warehouse around the corner who can help with their stock holding or other local support? Can your buying power actually lower their costs as they hope? Or can their new ingredients actually enhance your product and reduce their waste? Knowledge is a two-way street. Your specialism is production. Partners bring talents to the table, and both sides should benefit if you want to be open to business.
So in summary, it's all about making it happen faster and simpler. So visibility and access, as I said a few minutes ago, make sure people know that you're there on your website, on your social media, etc. Quote a response time. Say all inquiries will be answered in 24, 48, 72 hours, 7 days, and then target to be inside that. One of the frustrations for a small business is reaching out, but then never knowing whether the request has been received or whether anything's happening. In terms of communications, explain the process from quote to delivery and listen to the client's needs. Try, if you can, to make quick decisions and communicate them quickly. There's no need to sit on bad news. It's just as useful for the client to hear bad news quickly as it is good news. And to try and help the client to make it easy for you. So set out the info that you need in order to assess whether you can help them or not. Not 30 pages. The 30 pages might come in time. I've just done power of attorney online, which is always described as something that's extremely difficult to do. And they've revamped it recently. So now every bit of information that they ask for, right next to it is an explanation of what it is and why they need it. Now, could you do something in headline terms like that for your clients? Share your network, as Ruth has said. Set out your constraints. They're not necessarily deal breakers, but if you both know your constraints, that can help the gears mesh, and there may be a way of working for both of you that gets around that constraint. show a case study of an example of a client that worked really well for you, and maybe have a short video attached to that. Because remember, even if there's no deal, if the client's had a good experience, they might come back to you when they're bigger, or when they've got the answers to those questions. And finally, flexibility. As a client, it is vitally important that they always feel that they can ask. They might not get, the answer they want, but at least they can ask. Remember that success for them is success for you. So we thought we'd end with a real life, what I think is a good experience. So there's actually an experience that I had in a company that I set up with some colleagues. So non-food example, but it was a product equipped, which was oversized wipes that we sold in Boots, Tesco, Sainsbury's, etc. And we had a manufacturing partner who made the product for us. And just to give you an idea of scale, their turnover was around 10 million, and our typical order was about £15,000. So through the onboarding process, we knew what we wanted to deliver. We knew what the key parameters were. We knew we needed to have a unique ingredient, but they were able to help us work on that recipe to also make it fit, be distinctive, but fit within their lines. Yes, we had unique ingredients, but we bought those in advance. So there was no risk for the manufacturer. With our food background, we didn't realize there was a regulatory approval required. This product had to go onto the European Union cosmetic database. And they didn't just say, you need to register on that. They say, and here's someone that we have worked with who could do that for you. We worked with their materials supplier for packaging. We had the designs, but again, that made life all a lot simpler. And we knew from the start what their operational constraints were. In terms of planning, we had minimum order quantities, but for the first run, they relaxed those minimum order quantities. Yes, they charged us a little bit more, what we knew, but that put us in a position where we were taking quite a risk going to much larger customers, but they were helping us to mitigate that risk. Lead times, we knew it had to be 4 weeks, but they had planning prompts. So they would say, oh, we're looking at our production plan, and actually in 2 weeks' time, we've got the other products on that we would normally make with yours. Do you want to bring your order forward? Do you want a supplementary order? So that was very much a partnership working together. And then in operation, yeah, when you're supplying those kind of retailers and you run a promotion, we have one with Boots that oversold 3 times what the forecast was. And they were able, talking to them, which we always felt we could do, they were able to help us fill some of that gap. And definitely we used the network. We were the case that Ruth referenced of they had a third-party warehouse 5 miles down the road who could do deliveries, making everything smoother. What did that cost them? It probably cost them time and thinking. It didn't cost them any money. So that's the end of the presentation. I hope you've been able to find something useful out of that.
Great, thank you very much, Ian and Ruth. I would like at this point to bring in Alice and just get her perspective on this relationship between smaller businesses and third-party manufacturers.
Okay, thank you, Valia, and thank you, Ian and Ruth. I have to say, I was smiling knowingly through many parts of that talk because it really spoke to me from some of the experiences that I've had. So before I joined the Food Innovation Centre, I was in food manufacturing roles for 12 years, in fact, and usually as a technical manager or a product development technologist. And I was usually the only person on site responsible for going and finding or talking to a co-manufacturer. Let me tell you a little bit about my experiences then. So let's talk about what went well. Well, a nice interaction with the co-manufacturer always involved them inviting me quite early on in the process, or at least when I asked, can I come down and visit you and look at your factory and meet you, that I had a positive response and that I was, able to go and have a good chat with one person who was knowledgeable about technical things about the operation, who was very happy to take me into the factory, show me equipment, answer my questions. And this was all because sometimes you need to actually incorporate that into the development of the product itself, because there may be limitations or nuances of a particular co-manufacturing site that you need to take into account. So maybe, for example, for packaging, sometimes there's only various different change parts that will fit on one machine. And so you can only have this bottle size or that bottle size, but not the one that perhaps your marketing team had asked you to produce. So it's very important that you can get that information quite quickly. And I liked the personal connection. So I liked that I was invited there, that I shook someone's hand, I got to know the character. Then I felt comfortable to ring them back and ask more questions and just have that dialogue from the beginning. And it's also a trust building thing, I think, as well. You want to trust them with your brand, because I was working for beverage branded companies, so we had a reputation to uphold. I also wanted to go down and look at the factory because from a food safety perspective, I was responsible as the food business operator for the product. So I wanted to know that it was a legitimate factory, it was clean, it was hygienic, and that I trusted their QA team with my product. I think the other thing as well is I liked it when a co-manufacturer was interested in my product. And I liked to take samples for them to taste, actually for the whole team to taste, particularly the guys working on the line and the QA technicians, because I think it's important that they understood and cared about the quality of the product and got to understand what was good and bad in the eyes of the brand that I was working for. So those are my experiences that made my life easy working with co-manufacturers.
And I noticed when you said, Alice, thank you very much, but I noticed when you said this one person and you went up, so I thought, oh my gosh, this is clearly something you feel is important and it helps can you tell me more about, so where would this one person, is this like your main contact, or where would that one person sit if you are the third party and you're trying to organize your business?
Right.
How would you?
Yes, I would love it if it is somebody in the business who has both good operational and technical knowledge within that business. That's the person I want as my single point of contact. And that's because all of my questions that I'm going to have is, can you tell me about your process, the equipment, how you work, your planning schedules, those volumes, those kind of things. But I also wanted to be able to talk technical, so to talk about what things I wanted measured in the QA lab, and for them to understand what I was talking about. So I wanted to talk to somebody, I suppose, that was like a reflection of myself,
right, okay,
on the co-manufacturing side. So we could talk at the same level, on the same wavelength. Yes,
absolutely. And I just for the audience, I don't know if I'm sure you've spotted the beautiful double act that Ian as the client was doing with Ruth as the third party. So therefore, back to this one point of contact, because I think, people and relationships make or break partnerships. So Ian, if, from a client's perspective, would you consider having one point of contact at the third party as critical?
Yeah, I think having just one is important, but that doesn't mean you'll only talk to one.
No.
You need to manage that process. So initially, the contact would be a commercial person, because they are going to be the person who has got a target to bring in more business, etc. But that would then progress to a technical person, because, as Alice says, you want to try and speak the same language. I think the point I would make here is there's a balance. So there can be too much communication, there can be not enough. So you've got to kind of put that in the early days to set that, yeah, this is appropriate, or this isn't, this isn't appropriate. I just as a personal example, I had an Italian boss once who had who had a penchant for ringing up his fellow board members on a Saturday morning. The third time he did it, my wife picked up the phone. He stopped ringing me on Saturday mornings. So there is a balance, but for a client, think of this as like an IT desk. You're not going to be ringing it all the time, but you feel confident that you know it's there if you do need it. And I think that's kind of the model that I would try to get to.
Excellent. Right, well, let's look at the questions you've got. Thank you both for that. Let's take the first one. So how important is, how important is a confidentiality agreement or an NDA when talking to potential partners? Yes, so can I maybe bring Ruth in from a, working, being kind of the linchpin between both the business, the client and the manufacturer.
Yeah. So there's two sides to this. If someone comes to you with an NDA, they're obviously, it's their baby. They're very, cautious about meeting you and what have you. I have no problems about working under NDAs or not, because the reputation I hope I have, and I've tried to, it's part of my values, is that I talk a lot, but I don't break confidentiality. Whenever I didn't mention any company names, we're going through all of this. From the point of view of presenting an NDA and saying, should we let somebody into our factory without them signing an NDA that they're not going to tell everyone what our factory is doing? Because I've had it from both sides. Is an NDA is only as useful as somebody who wants to actually defend it. The more important side of it is that chemistry. About, do you trust the person you're talking to? Yes, do the formal papers, but not a 30-page, a 35, 40-page NDA, which I've seen before now, but actually agree. I mean, when I worked at Tesco's, we used to sign, we had bigger clout. We used to sign that if we launched a product, that was our sole product and we used to either put, depending on how successful we thought it was going to be, we either put 6 months or a year that the manufacturer couldn't do something else to it, because we know with recipes you can't defend them, because you just got to change half a gram on one ingredient and it's a new recipe as far as the law is concerned. With process, you will have different ways of processing it. So I think discussing if they work under NDAs and actually having that conversation without giving your absolute secrets away. Once you've got that trust and once you've got that chemistry going, then if the lawyers want to get involved, but quite honestly, there are very few chocolate cakes that are absolutely the bee's knees and nothing else is the same. As Ian mentioned, with the brand he worked with, if you need it to go through the way to match so the consumer doesn't notice which manufacturer you're working with, it's got to be down to reputation. And speak to other, ask them for being able to speak to other people that they produce for. So
to get that confidence.
Yeah, get that confidence. And if you're not confident that with the other person, it's time to walk away, because you're going to find other glitches along.
Right. Yeah.
Along that.
Yeah. Alice, you're nodding here.
Yes, absolutely agree, because it goes back to the point I suppose I was making, that you want to get to know the co-manufacturer, and it's relationship building, and a lot of the confidentiality comes from a relationship.
And
so, if you don't have that, then the paper does little for you, I think. So you really that's the bit I was sort of agreeing with. Through and through. Get that bit right and the rest of it follows, and the paperwork then does the legal bit for you. But
so we're not saying
human side
don't do the paperwork. Yes, do it. Maybe not overcomplicated.
Sure.
But at the same time, you've got to build that relationship, and that's where the trust will come.
Yes, and as an SME, don't think that by having a piece of paper that's the be all and end all. So don't be so naive to think that the piece of paper does the whole job, because it doesn't. in real life, it doesn't. It's all about choosing the right people to work with and making sure you trust the people that you're working with.
I mean, absolutely, because I've been employed to break recipes before now. Can you copy this for me? Can you? So it doesn't actually need to be your third party manufacturer who's done that, but somebody else who's seen it out on the shelf goes, oh, you know, let's see if we can do that too.
Ian,
If I can just interject here from a client point of view, they put great value in NDAs, probably more value than they practically have. But I think from a manufacturer point of view, it is showing that intent, and that's the key thing.
Yes, and I like that point as well, because it also shows professionalism, and you know that that you're now ready for business and you'll do business properly. Brilliant. I've got another question here. Oh yes, there's someone on one of the slides. I think it was Ruth that mentioned it. She talked about having a mutual get out clause, and I think you put in brackets a prenup. What factors should you include in this? So Ruth, can I start with you on that?
Yeah, I mean, what if you're not sure that you can make the product, or that you think that the client is actually asking for too small a volume? I mean, for example, and this is one that several people on this call might know about, and I had permission from Ian to mention it. I've been working with a startup that's trying to do very specialist ready meals, and what we did is we found somebody who could produce them for them at a really small quantity, and that was the whole contract, because we weren't sure, once we had the product, we could then show it to potential customers and do other tests with that, and then we'd know what sort of volumes we could come back with. So sometimes it's what Ian was saying, you know, sometimes you won't hear from them from a bit, and they've gone away, they've had to raise more money, they've had to get customers to agree that they're going to put in assured orders, but actually they need the factory production product to be able to sell the product. So it's breaking the circle. It's the chicken and egg, what comes first. So sometimes you go, all right, what we'll do, and I do know a few companies who are actually building their business on specializing in that. They're very few, and I wish there were more, that actually say, okay, we will do a first production run for you, and we will help you, we'll charge you, but we will take your test kitchen recipe or your domestic recipe, put it into a factory format, and do that first production run, so you can get all your shelf life because you've got your final packaging and all the rest of it, and go and show your samples to your customers. But that's the service, and then you come back to us, and then our minimum order quantity is this.
And again, it is about clarity, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's your flexibility, yeah. and then yes. And they might not ever come back again. And actually, when you make it, you go, oh God, that was more difficult than I thought. Thanks, guys. You know, if you come back, we're going to double the cost.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't realize the yield was this or that or what have you. But that's, you know, that's what I mean is to put in those, look, we're both trialing this.
Yeah.
So we will go to this point, and then we'll make the decision.
And I think, as Ian said, even if they get a good experience, even if they're not ready, so the mutual clause is, you know, reaching a certain quantity. If you can't reach it, of course, you go, you know, you need to look somewhere else. But if they've had that transparency, that trust developed, and a good experience, maybe when they are of the right size for your third-party manufacturing, they will come back.
Another question. Recommend you across, Valia, because it's your reputation. They're also networking, and your name will go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question we've got, so I'm looking at the time as well. How can a third party decide who to work with? That's a good one. Alice, can I start with you on this one? How can a third party decide whether a small business is the right one for them to work with?
Right, so it's very much, again, I'm going to say meet them in person again, because I think you can tell a lot by having a conversation with someone face to face. And I think in that initial conversation, you're going to get to know whether you think they've got a really good business plan. You're going to get to know whether they've got a route to market, for example, because at the end of the day, you're trying to assess, are they ready? And do you think that their product is going to make it? Because I imagine that you're wishing to grow the business with them. That's every co-manufacturer's
Yeah, absolutely.
wish. So you're trying to look at the feasibility of the product really, and see what you think to it as well, and look at their readiness. But on the other hand, I would say then don't discount the ones that you don't feel are quite ready, because I think those co-manufacturers that are willing to spend a little bit of time in the consultancy phase, if you like, kind of guiding the ones that have got maybe a great idea, but there's some steps in the middle that are missing. I think sometimes it's a worthy investment to take on a few of those if you can, and coach them through. But I think it then depends on the actual personality of the person, whether you think that you can work with them. Is it a person you can work with? And do you think that they just need that technical and operational help? Because maybe they're not from the industry, like Ian mentioned, crossing into a different discipline is not easy. And sometimes you just need the guidance. But essentially, you've got a good business idea.
Yeah, but meeting people, talking to people, and I think it's easy. We have all got, well, we're doing it now, we're on a Zoom and it's fabulous, and we can reach many people, but do not underestimate, especially as we're all getting used to working virtually, the power, like you say, of meeting people. Can I stay with you? I'll have this and then pass the question to Ian and Ruth. But what accreditations, certifications should a co-manufacturer hold?
Right. Yes, I think it's very much to do with what scale you're offering.
Okay.
Operation. Because sometimes if you want to work with lots of SMEs, they're often asking for fairly small runs, and so if you are a smaller co-manufacturing site, or you've got lines that run smaller capacity runs, then perhaps just having salsa or something for that facility is good enough.
Right.
I think another thing as well to say that even if you haven't got as far as the accreditation level, it's understanding having HACCP in place and having all those basics in place that you've got to do. And I think maybe some startups might not have an appreciation of that. So they might need that kind of guidance at the beginning. They may not have thought about that at the beginning. Okay. But then, of course, a lot of people wishing to get into the multiples and the big retailers, they're going to want to see BRC. So
so salsa, if you're a small and you're looking for small production runs, your third party must have salsa and obviously a good understanding of HACCP. And then if you're looking at large quantities and going into big retailers, you would expect them to have BRC. Sure. Anything
and
to
it allows
add?
Your client to trust you straight away, doesn't
Yes,
it? You've already got one of those very recognized accreditations. Yeah.
Right. I'm hurrying you along because I need to ask my final question. But Ruth, anything to add on the accreditation?
No, Alice covered it all. That's fine.
Brilliant. So that was very clear. Right, my prerogative. I'm chairing this one. I'm asking the final question because we're 4 minutes to 2. And this is, again, linking it to our Food Innovation Toolkit, which, by the way, audience, you can find on IFST's website under Resources and Policy. What would be the one thing you would put in the toolkit if you had to choose one thing? Ian?
I think it would be, what does the manufacturing partner want from me? So that I know that when I go to them, I'm going to have the bare bones of the questions that they're going to ask me. And that will tell me if I can't answer all those questions, maybe I'm not quite ready. But it helps me get my thoughts in order.
Brilliant. Ruth? The one thing?
I think from the manufacturing point of view is to actually get out from the client what is the key sensory attribute to their product that must not be lost on scale up, because that will save a lot of arguments later.
Alice?
For me, it's invite your brand owner to come down and meet you early on in the process. Brilliant. Meet you in person. Yeah.
Thank you. So thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Alice. You have distilled your experiences, and and you have showed us what good looks like and how can we get better. We are now we've now completed our webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you to those that have attended. If we didn't manage, and I know we didn't manage to answer all your questions, you can contact Ian, Ruth, and Alice directly. You can see their details on the screen. We will be sharing the recording of the webinar, including the Q&A, to everyone who attended today. It will get to you via email, and then later on it will be on our on IFST's webinar hub. Before you log off, please fill in our short survey. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get it. It will be on your screen as soon as you log off. Once again, thank you all very, very much, and goodbye.